Okay, good morning, folks. And here's an exclusive story from some website called Giant Freakin' Robot. And it's all about Dragon Age being adapted to a Netflix series. And it just came out, so yay, news is news, fantastic stuff. So they're saying this is true because they have an exclusive from a trusted and proven source. If you go to the link of their trusted and proven sources, you see a list of other articles, which I haven't opened, but apparently it's different sources, or maybe it's one, I don't know. And this one was 30 seconds ago, this was 2 hours ago, this was 3 days ago. So it's just like, hey, our source said stuff. And you're like, great. Did all of these things happen? I don't know. Couldn't tell you. And they don't seem to want to tell. They can stay anonymous with their source. They just gotta like, how do we know this is true? Just tell us. And if you're pumping things out seconds after I just opened another article from an hour ago, don't know. I don't think Doug Norrie is the source, so he's just the guy who writes the articles. Anyway, there are a few details around what a Netflix Dragon Age series would look like, but based on the original game, there are a number of ways for this to go, with significant latitude around character development especially. Okay, for side characters, sure, there's lots of events in the side characters' stories, but none of the main characters. Not even with Dragon Age 2, which had the most fleshed out character I could think of, the Hawk doesn't really change too much. So I don't know if character development's the right thing to say about the Dragon Age franchise. I think character dialogue is a focus, and that is entertaining, and people will enjoy the random adventures people go on if it's episodic storytelling, for example, like Star Trek. So you have these core number of characters, and they banter and do this and that. That would work fine. But character development, I don't know. That would require some actual skill. They have to be planning that out. There'd be an actual plot you'd have to follow, breaking that down into multiple episodes and an ongoing quest or an ongoing goal to stop a bad guy or what have you. That could work, but haven't quite seen that in the Dragon Age franchise. It's just bad guy there, go stop them. Get people. And then they have interesting stories, whereas the main character is just the vehicle for those stories to take place. Unlike some other video game adaptations, the role-playing aspect of the game would give creative options for new characters, especially I'm not afforded by other productions. I don't know what that means. If they're trying to do another Bandersnatch or various other interactive stuff, that might be what they're talking about, but that's probably not a good recommendation. Those are still not the best forms of storytelling unless there's something innovative and unique about them. So I don't think that would fly very well. If you're going to do that, just make a game. Make a series of games, make like Telltale games if that's what you really want to do, with choice, and just focus on that. Don't do big gigantic RPGs that with engines you don't understand. Like, it's just not a good idea. Sure, there are rules with set starting characters, but they aren't as clearly defined as other shows we've seen produced based on video game IP. Huh. I'm kind of curious because Bioware takes a lot of effort into world building, and I want to know what other video game IPs that have been produced into shows. Maybe they mean set starting characters like main characters. Let's say like Ezio Auditore from Assassin's Creed. Like, that's okay. We know where he comes from. We know exactly what he's about. Whereas some of the characters in Dragon Age are like the Warden, the guy. not very definitive. Same with the Inquisitor. He's just the person who does stuff. Hawk, you could say, is a bit more defined, of course. Created by Bioware, Dragon Age is a franchise, yes, encompassing a number of different video games titles that have been released. So, Origins, Dragon Age 2, Inquisition, and 4, which is in development. So I don't even know why they're mentioning 4. And 4 spin-off games, Journeys, Legends, Heroes of Dragon Age, and The Last Court. Some of these I've never heard of. These are some mobile games which have been released over the last decade. Plus, it stands to reason this series would begin around the relative events of Origins, which works to world build around the beginning aspects of the world. Not necessarily. You could start the game anywhere, start the new series anywhere. And Origins is a good bet just because that's where it started. But nothing says you can't start with 2 and talk about Kirkwall. So you could even start an Inquisition. The difference is you'd have to have a main character that has some actual character. You have to give them something. You can't just say, okay, generic hero dude, here's 12 other characters. It's not a great idea. You're just going to be constantly reintroducing characters and giving them backstories and then having them have their own conflicts while the main character just sits around and helps them out. So world building, Origins would make sense, but again, you could world build from Kirkwall, you could world build from any point in the franchise could work. It's how you do it and what you're trying to introduce. The gods, for example. Are you going to be introducing the gods? Are they around? The Fade demons, all these things you could do in any point in time throughout the franchise. The beginning would make sense, though, of course. Like a number of other legacy role-playing games, there are world elements in Dragon Age that have similar through lines to standard RPGs. Yep, any RPG has fantasy elements, and they look very similar, especially with Dragon Age because it is a dark fantasy or a high fantasy, whatever you want to call that, and they have just a smorgasbord of ideas and elements from other fantasies. So a writer, an artist, a designer can do almost anything they want. You have dragons, you have ghosts, you have vampires, you have elves, you got all kinds of crap, and you're free to use them all. It just sits well within the world. It's reasonably okay. Some of it's a bit too much, like dragons roaming the land. And Inquisition was like, we have like 7 or 8 dragons just running around. You're like, oh, really? So maybe they overdid it there. Set in the world of Thedas. I don't know. Was Thedas the plural version of Theta? I don't think so. Quite sure it's Thedas. The original game implements elements of high fantasy, wherein humans are part of the world, but so are elves, mages, dwarves, and the rest of the fantasy crew you expect to see in these settings. Yes, exactly. This is just generic fantasy with lots of blood and gore and death. So Thedas is an insular world, but broken into factions and territories that have geopolitical aspects to them. So like any fantasy, if you guys have ever read fantasy like Lord of the Rings, there's a map. And Tolkien makes all these details of what the map is comprised of and who's there, territory, boundaries, that sort of thing. I think most fantasy authors who want a detailed world or like to world build will draw a map either in their heads or on paper. So that's standard fantasy, and that's what you expect. So nothing really special. And of course, with any series, there's the question of what we would be signing up for in terms of story and antagonist. Oh God, that's going to be very important. Which antagonist would we use from Dragon Age? The generic Darkspawn from Origins? Hopefully not. The equally generic and horrible villain from Inquisition? I dare not speak his name. I think, actually, no, the Dragon Age 2 villains could be interesting. They're more human. They're more fleshed out. I always wanted Loghain just because he's my favorite character of all the series, and he's just got so much to him to work with. That would be the easiest, just because there's, again, so much to work with. But you can go anywhere. You can make a brand new antagonist. The same way they would have to make a brand new main character because you have to flesh them out now. The protagonist would have to be substantial, and so would the antagonist. So if you already have Loghain, great, flesh out your warden. If you already have the mages and the Templars from Dragon Age 2, flesh out Hawk even more. That'd be the easiest. Dragon Age 2 would probably be the easiest because you already have 3 established characters with some backstory just make them better. So, while Dragon Age has a number of companion players that would almost definitely get a chance as key characters in any story, there's also the trouble this world sits on the edge of to start. I don't think it's a huge problem to start on any timeline throughout the Dragon Age games. So the question is, how would you introduce an Inquisition? That's a bit more involved. How do you explain needing a call to action to start an Inquisition? That's a little bit of lore you got to flesh out first. And that might take some time. But you do have main characters like our French Inquisitor, or Legion Inquisitor, or not her, the one who starts the Inquisition, whose name escapes me. And she is fleshed out. So that could work. There's so many ways to do this, and just because there's so many characters. It all depends on what the author wants to achieve. Is it drama? Is it action? Is it adventure? Is it just a generic hack and slash thing like Xena Warrior Princess? Like, what's the show going to be like? I don't know. That is the attack of the Darkspawn, which surface every few hundred years to rain terror on the region. Yeah, they generally put Darkspawn in each of their stories. It's consistent with the rest of the lore, and it was always an idea predicated on wardens having to go to the Dark Roads to fight the Darkspawn, because that is the fate of every warden. And I think they're trying to subvert that with the warden seeking out how to stop that disease that encourages them to do that and become a Darkspawn. It's called The Blight, and this would almost assuredly be where a new series began, working on the eve of this event. If they're going to do the whole thing of oh, you have this magical power and it could sense evil and gives you strength or this or that, it's like, all right, yeah, generic dark fantasy stuff. You have the taint. You literally have the taint. So that could work. Netflix isn't new to video game adaptation, having already produced The Witcher, which is heading into its second season. That is a mixed bag, and it's kind of like a phenomenon. The Witcher is a special thing, and it's not about the quality of the writing per se of the original books. It's the quality of the adaptation into a video game as well as into a series. Having Henry Cavill is really a great idea. And a lot of things didn't work. A lot of things did. So it is a mixed bag. But it's popular. So it's going to be a second season and all that stuff, which is good. So bravo to the Witcher series. One could imagine a Dragon Age series reaching similar heights if done well. Yeah, if done well. You could say this sentence about any series, if done well. And that's the problem with the Bioware writers. If the Bioware writers are nowhere near this, it could be done well. As soon as they come close, then we're screwed. And this is the problem I have with Bioware. The writing is a double-edged sword. They have a great premise, a great idea. Then they have great characters or side characters. Then you have bad main characters, bad villains sometimes. Sometimes great dialogue, sometimes horrible dialogue. It's a double-edged sword of a mixed bag of things that you're not sure it's going to be good or bad. So, yeah, that's Bioware for you. So if the writers don't touch it, maybe creative input. I think that's a great idea, like a spiritual leader or a spiritual lore master to say this is how we did villains, this is how we did fights, this is how we did magic. And then a real writer, a good writer for the Netflix series goes, oh, okay, I can work with that. I think the fade is going to be fun, a little too fun. I think if they get out of hand. There is a source material for ages here, and plenty of worlds to build. I am sure we will get more news on the new series sooner than later. So there it is, a very quick article on Dragon Age, the Netflix series. I would be curious what you guys think could work, because there's so many ways this could flow. How you could write a setting or a pilot for Dragon Age, the Netflix series. And I'm curious, do you guys think it would work better in Origins with Loghain and the Warden, or with Dragon Age 2 with Hawk and all the wonderful hijinks he gets into, or with Inquisition with the Inquisition? Yeah. So, thank you for listening. Have yourself a great day.